He wouldn't let a single doctor touch him until the night nurse whispered a code that it was supposed to be buried with a dead unit. By the time Staff Sergeant Mason Cole hit the trauma bay, the floor was slick with rainwater blood and panic. His uniform was torn open. His shoulder was bleeding through both hands of the paramedic trying to save him. But Mason wasn't looking for help. He was counting exits, watching corners, flinching at every badge like the war had followed him into the hospital. Everyone saw a dangerous patient. One quiet nurse saw a man still trapped in the place that broke him. Tonight's story is about Trauma Trust buried military secrets and the kind of courage that doesn't need to shout. Stay with me to the end, and if you're watching, hit like and comment your city and state. Long before Mason Cole was rolled through the ambulance doors with blood on his uniform and death in his eyes, Mercy Harbor Medical Center had already learned how to mistake silence for weakness. The hospital sat on the eastern edge of Savannah, where old brick streets gave way to wet pavement marsh wind and the restless movement of military aircraft from Hunter Army Airfield. By day, Mercy Harbor looked almost ordinary. Families came through the glass entrance with coffee cups, insurance cards, and worried voices. Doctors crossed the lobby with clipped steps. Visitors carried flowers that smelled too sweet beside the antiseptic. But after midnight, the building changed. The lights seemed colder. The halls seemed longer. The vending machines hummed like tired insects. The waiting room filled with people who had spent all day pretending they could make it one more hour. A mother holding a feverish child against her shoulder. A man in work boots pressing a towel against a cut hand. A woman in church clothes staring at the floor because the bruises under her sleeves had finally hurt worse than her fear of explaining them. Claire Whitaker knew that version of Mercy Harbor better than anyone. She came in at 6:42 every evening, even though her shift did not start until 7. She parked in the far corner of the employee lot beneath a crooked oak tree that dropped leaves onto her windshield in every season. Most of the staff hated that walk after dark. The lot was poorly lit. The air was heavy with salt, and on storm nights the puddles hid the lines painted on the asphalt. Claire preferred it. The walk gave her time to listen. Not to music, never music. She listened to the distant whine of traffic on Truman Parkway, the soft push of wind through the live oaks, the metallic rattle of a loose sign above the loading dock. Some nights, helicopters passed low over the hospital, their blades beating the humid air into a sound that made everyone else glance up for half a second and then forget. Claire never glanced up. She kept walking with her badge already in her hand, her face calm, her shoulders loose, her breathing measured. If anyone had watched closely, they might have noticed that she counted the seconds between the first sound of the rotors and the moment they faded over the river. They might have noticed that her left hand opened and closed once at her side. They might have noticed that when thunder rolled in from the coast, she never stopped moving, but her eyes sharpened. Most people did not watch that closely. Inside, her routine never changed. She entered through the staff door near radiology, nodded to whoever sat half asleep at the desk, and crossed to the locker room. Navy scrubs, hair tied back, small silver watch, no necklace, no rings. Phone silenced. Locker shut with one soft click. Then she went to the board. The other nurses checked the assignment list with the weary hope of avoiding the worst rooms. Claire checked it like a weather map. She looked for pressure points. Room 4, intoxicated fall combative with staff. Room 7, chest pain, history of panic episodes. Room 11, possible overdose mother present and escalating. Hallway. Bed. C, elderly veteran with infected leg wound, frequent flyer refuses treatment from new staff. Denise Morales, who everyone called Denny, except administration, stood beside her with a paper cup of coffee and a pen stuck through her bun. "Don't do it," Denny said. Claire did not look away from the board. Do what? Pick up 4 and 11 like you don't have a survival instinct. Claire reached for the marker and wrote her initials beside both rooms. Denny sighed into her coffee. One day, you're going to choose a nice, quiet patient with a normal blood pressure and a family that says thank you. Claire capped the marker. Sounds suspicious. Sounds restful. Rest makes people careless. Denny looked at her over the rim of the cup. You know, most people just say they hate easy assignments. Claire almost smiled. Most people talk too much. That was how Claire moved through the department, quietly without waste. She did not float from room to room like someone trying to be liked. She entered with purpose, lowered the temperature of whatever chaos waited inside, and left before anyone could make a performance of gratitude. In room 4, the intoxicated fall was a dock worker named Luis, with blood in his eyebrow and anger rolling off him like heat. 2 techs stood too close to the bed. His brother kept shouting that nobody was doing anything. Luis kept trying to sit up. Claire stepped into the room and took in the scene. Blood, not arterial. Breathing clear. Pupils equal, hands restless. Pride injured worse than the head. She did not rush toward him. "Luis," she said. He blinked at her, still gripping the bed rail. "Who are you?" "Claire, I'm going to clean the cut above your eye." "No, you're not." "Not yet," she said. "First, you're going to sit back before you fall and make me do paperwork." His brother snapped, "He needs a doctor." "He has one," Claire said. "He also has gravity, and gravity is winning." Luis stared at her. Something in his face shifted not into trust exactly, but into curiosity. That was enough. He lowered himself half an inch. Claire looked at the techs. "Give him room." One moved back immediately. The other hesitated. Claire's gaze found him calm and direct. "Room." He stepped back. The brother was still talking. Claire turned to him without raising her voice. "Sir, I need you to breathe before he borrows your panic." The brother stopped mid-sentence. Claire cleaned the wound in short, efficient motions. She told Luis before every touch. Gauze, saline, pressure, light. He cursed twice. She accepted it like weather. "You always this bossy," he muttered. "Only when people bleed on clean sheets." By the time Dr. Emma Hart entered with the suture tray, Luis was still angry, but he was lying still. His brother had stopped pacing. The room had gone from explosive to merely unpleasant. Emma paused at the door. She was 29, new to emergency medicine, sharp enough to know how much she did not yet know, and young enough to still be amazed by competence that did not announce itself. Her white coat was too clean for the night shift. Her eyes moved from Luis to Claire to the quiet techs. "How did you get him calm?" Emma asked after they stepped into the hall. Claire pulled off her gloves. "I didn't." Emma glanced back through the glass. "He was trying to swing at people 10 minutes ago. He still might." "That's not comforting." "It's accurate." Emma followed her toward the supply room. "You always answer questions like you're trying to make people regret asking." Claire opened a cabinet and reached for dressings, only the easy ones. Emma laughed, once surprised. Claire did not, but something softened around her eyes for half a second. That was the thing about Claire. She was not cold. Patients knew it before staff did. The homeless man with pneumonia knew it when she warmed a blanket before placing it over his shoulders. The teenage girl with track marks knew it when Claire asked her mother to step out before asking the real questions. The old woman with dementia knew it when Claire hummed the hymn the woman kept forgetting the words to. Claire had a way of making people feel seen without making them feel studied. But in a hospital, quiet skill was easy to use and easier to overlook. Dr. Grant Keller was the kind of physician whose presence changed the room before he spoke. Tall, clean-shaven, broad through the shoulders with dark hair always pushed back like he had just removed a surgical cap. He was good, and everyone knew it. His hands were fast. His decisions were faster. When trauma came in, Keller became the center of gravity. Residents straightened around him. Nurses anticipated him. Families trusted the certainty in his voice because fear loves anyone who sounds like a plan. Claire respected his skill. She did not respect his habit of confusing volume with command. Their friction had begun months earlier during a pileup on Interstate 16 after a morning fog bank rolled in from the marsh. 15 patients arrived in less than half an hour. Broken wrists, cracked ribs, a child with glass in her scalp, a driver with a crushed knee. The emergency department filled with wet coats, diesel smell, and the thin metallic scent of blood. Keller moved through the center of it like a man conducting a storm. Claire had been assigned to a woman in her 40s who kept apologizing. Her name was Rebecca Mills. Seatbelt bruising crossed her chest. Her blood pressure was soft but not alarming. Her husband kept asking if she could go home soon because their dog had been left inside. A resident checked her abdomen, ordered imaging, and nearly moved on. Claire noticed Rebecca's hand. Not the bruising, not the tremor. The way her fingers kept curling toward her left side and then stopping as if her body knew where the danger was before her mind did. Claire leaned closer. "Rebecca, look at me." Rebecca's eyes struggled to focus. "I feel silly." "You feel strange." Rebecca nodded. "Like I'm here, but I'm not all the way here." Claire pressed 2 fingers beneath the lower ribs. Rebecca flinched barely. The monitor chirped. Claire turned to the resident. "She needs Keller now." The resident was already stepping away. "She's queued for imaging. She needs him now. It's a bruised abdomen." Claire's voice did not rise. "It's internal bleeding until proven otherwise." The resident frowned. "Her pressure is not that low. It's going there." Keller was 2 rooms over, placing a chest tube. Claire looked through the glass and caught his eye. She did not wave, she did not shout. She simply held his gaze and shook her head once. Something in her face made him come. 3 minutes later, Rebecca's pressure dropped hard. 6 minutes after that, she was on her way to surgery. She lived. The debrief administration praised Keller for decisive intervention. Keller accepted it with the tired nod of a man who had earned more praise than he had time to enjoy. No one mentioned Claire. She stood at the back of the room with a paper cup of water in one hand and a smear of dried blood along her wrist that was not hers. Denny found her later restocking trauma drawers. "You should have said something," Denny told her. Claire slid gauze into place. "About what?" "You saw it first. The patient survived. That is not the same thing as people knowing you saved her." Claire looked at the drawer until every stack was squared. "Tonight it is." That answer traveled through the department the way small truths do, changing shape depending on who repeated it. Some called Claire humble. Some called her impossible. Keller seemed to file the moment away under useful but limited. A week later, Emma overheard him in the physician lounge. The door had not fully closed. Keller stood by the counter stirring powdered creamer into coffee that had been burned for hours. A surgical resident leaned against the fridge listening with the hungry attention of someone collecting opinions from powerful men. "Whitaker is solid," Keller said. "Excellent instincts. Better with difficult patients than almost anyone on nights." The resident nodded. "But he asked." Keller lifted the cup. "But crisis leadership requires force. Speed, presence. Claire is too measured. She works best in support." Emma stood in the hallway holding 2 charts against her chest. She saw Claire at the far end of the corridor, close enough to hear every word. For a second, Claire stopped. That was all. No wounded expression. No confrontation. No sharp breath. Just a pause so brief that anyone else might have missed it. Then she continued walking. Emma caught up with her near the medication room. "Claire." Claire scanned her badge. "Doctor, I'm sorry." "For what?" Emma glanced back toward the lounge. "What he said." Claire opened the medication drawer. "He said what he thinks. That doesn't make it right." "No," Claire said. "It makes it useful." Emma frowned. "Useful? You learn more from what people say when they think you can't hear them." The drawer clicked shut. Emma watched her go, unsettled by the steadiness of her back. Over the following weeks, Emma began to notice things. Claire never stood with her back to a doorway. In crowded rooms, her eyes moved in a pattern: door, hands, windows, floor. Patient door. When a monitor alarm sounded behind her, she turned her head before her body as if her muscles had learned long ago not to give the world more movement than necessary. She could enter a room full of shouting relatives and find the one person who might become dangerous before that person moved. Once, during a thunderstorm, a tray of instruments slipped from a tech's hands and crashed onto the floor. Everyone jumped. Claire did not. But her right hand moved toward her hip so fast Emma almost missed it. There was nothing there. Claire seemed to realize it at the same time. She lowered her hand bent to help pick up the instruments and asked the tech if he had cut himself. Emma said nothing. The break room was where the first real crack appeared. It was close to 3 a.m. Rain tapped against the narrow window. The television mounted in the corner played muted cable news until someone found the remote and turned up the volume for a segment about overseas evacuations. Grainy footage filled the screen. Desert light, dust, men running bent low beneath rotor wash, a medical helicopter dropping into a field. The sound of the blades filled the room. Claire had just poured coffee into a foam cup. The cup folded in her hand. Hot coffee spilled over her fingers and onto the floor. Emma stood up. Claire set the pot down with careful precision. "I'm fine." "No, you're burned." "It's coffee." That's usually how burns work. Claire reached for napkins. Her face had gone still in a way Emma had never seen, not blank, not frightened, but far away. The television kept thundering with helicopter blades. Claire crossed the room and muted it. No one else spoke. Then she wiped her hand, threw the napkins away, and left. Emma followed her into the hall. "Do helicopters bother you?" Claire stopped beside a linen cart. For several seconds, the only sound was rain against the ambulance bay doors. "Noise bothers everyone at 3 a.m, Claire said. That wasn't noise. Claire looked at her then. Her eyes were blue pale under the fluorescent lights, and for one strange moment Emma had the feeling that Claire was deciding which version of the truth could fit through the narrow space between them. Then Claire said, "Check on room 11. She'll say she's sleeping." "She isn't," and walked away. Hank Bellamy noticed more than Emma did. Hank came in every Thursday for wound care on a leg injury that had outlived 2 marriages, 3 jobs, and most of his patients. He was 71, a retired Marine with a jaw like weathered wood and a voice that sounded like gravel in a coffee can. He complained about everything. The chairs, the parking, the billing department, the way young nurses called him honey, the fact that the hospital coffee tasted like it had been filtered through old socks. He never complained about Claire. She changed his dressing without babying him. She asked real questions: weather making the pain worse, any heat around the wound, still skipping the antibiotics when your stomach turns. He lied. She let him know she knew. They had an arrangement. One Thursday night, Hank watched her wash her hands. "You ever wear a uniform, Whittaker?" Claire turned off the faucet. "I'm wearing one." "Not that kind." She dried her hands. "You want the blue wrap or the white?" "I want an answer." "Blue it is." He sat back studying her. "You move like somebody who learned not to silhouette in doorways." Claire opened a drawer. "You always choose the chair facing the exit." "You clock every hand in the room." "You don't thank old veterans for their service because you know half of us don't know what to do with that sentence." She wrapped the dressing around his calf with even pressure. "Hank." "What?" "You're bleeding through again because you walked too much." "I'm talking." "You're avoiding." He barked out a laugh. "That's my line." Claire taped the dressing down. Hank leaned forward slightly, voice lower. "You got the look, girl." Claire's hands stilled for half a breath. Then she reached for a clean bandage packet. "What look?" "The one people get when they came home, but not all the way." For the first time that night, Claire met his eyes. The room seemed to narrow around them. The old man in the chair, the nurse beside the bed, the rain against the window. 2 people who knew that some wounds did not bleed until years later, and even then, only in private. Claire's voice was gentle when she spoke. "You should keep your leg elevated." Hank held her gaze. "That ain't a no." "No," Claire said, "it's medical advice." Hank smiled, but there was no victory in it. Only recognition. "Fair enough." Claire stood and gathered the used supplies. As she turned toward the trash, Hank said, "Whatever it was, I hope somebody said your name right when it mattered." Claire did not answer, but her hand tightened around the dressing wrapper until it crinkled. Outside those small moments, life at Mercy Harbor continued as it always did. Ambulances came. Families cried. Residents made mistakes. Keller corrected them sharply. Denny swore under her breath at broken printers. Emma learned which vending machine stole money and which hallway stayed cold no matter the season. Claire remained Claire. She took the hard rooms. She lowered her voice when everyone else raised theirs. She charted carefully. She slept poorly. On rare nights off, she ran before sunrise along the river when the streets were empty and the air smelled of mud salt and old stone. She kept her apartment neat enough to leave in a hurry, though no one ever asked why a nurse in Savannah needed to live like that. There was a framed photograph in the bottom drawer of her bedroom dresser. It faced down. Not hidden exactly, just turned away. Sometimes, after a long shift, Claire opened the drawer and looked at the back of the frame without touching it. Then she shut the drawer and stood in the dark until the shape of the room returned. By late summer, Mercy Harbor was full of heat and pressure. Storms rolled in most evenings, cracking open the sky and leaving the streets shining under traffic lights. Soldiers from nearby bases came through with training injuries, bar fights, dehydration, concussions, and the locked jaw silence of men who had not yet learned how to say they were afraid. Claire was good with them. People said that phrase because they did not have a better one. She was good with them, as if it were kindness, as if it were patience, as if she had taken a continuing education class on speaking gently to service members. Emma knew by then that it was something else. One night, a 19-year-old private came in after collapsing during training. His labs were ugly, his body overheated, his pride worse than both. When the team tried to cut away his shirt, he panicked and swung at a tech. Keller snapped restrain him. Claire stepped between them. "Private." The boy's eyes were wild. "Private, look at me. I'm fine." "No, you're not." I said I'm fine. Claire nodded once, as if accepting the lie for what it was. "Then prove it by breathing slower than me." He glared at her. She breathed in. He did not follow. She breathed out. His shoulders jerked once. "Slower," she said. "I can't." "You can. You're just angry that I noticed first." His mouth opened, ready to curse. Instead, he breathed. Once, then again. The tech lowered the restraint strap. Keller watched from the doorway with an unreadable expression. Afterward, Emma found Claire at the charting station. "Where did you learn that?" Claire typed without looking up. "People breathe everywhere." That's not an answer. It's the only one I have time for. Emma sat on the stool beside her. "You know, for someone who refuses to talk about herself, you leave evidence all over the place." Claire stopped typing. Denny, passing behind them with a stack of towels, muttered, "Careful, Doc. She'll start charging you for detective work." Claire resumed typing. "Room 6 needs discharge papers." Emma sighed. Deflection. Efficiency. Same thing with better posture. This time, Claire did smile just barely. Then the ambulance radio cracked from the wall speaker. The sound cut through the station with a burst of static. "Mercy Harbor. This is Rescue 3. Incoming adult male trauma military affiliated. Severe blood loss. Possible ballistic wounds. Patient combative. Repeat, patient combative. ETA 4 minutes." The department changed instantly. Not loudly, not all at once. A nurse looked up from a chart. A tech reached for gloves. Keller stepped out of room 2 and turned toward the trauma bays. Emma felt her pulse quicken that familiar jump before a serious case arrived. Claire did not move for 1 second. Her face emptied of everything unnecessary. Denny saw it and lowered the towels. "You know him." Claire's eyes were on the ambulance doors. "No." The radio hissed again. "Patient refusing contact. Keep stating no transfer, no restraints, no second location." Claire turned toward Bay 3. "Clear the foot of the bed," she said. Keller looked at her. "We haven't even seen him yet." Claire was already moving. "Security outside the sight line. No one blocks the door. Get warm fluids ready. Put the trauma shears on his left where he can see them." Emma followed her into the bay cold spreading through her chest despite the humid air. "Claire," she said quietly, "what are you hearing that we aren't?" Claire checked the suction, replaced a missing laryngoscope handle, moved a stool away from the corner, adjusted the overhead light so it did not blind the bed. Then she looked at Emma. "When a wounded man says second location," Claire said, "he is not afraid of the hospital." Another siren cut off outside. Claire reached for gloves. Emma stared at Claire for half a second too long, waiting for the sentence to turn into something ordinary. It did not. It stayed there between them, heavier than the storm pressing against the ambulance doors. Then the siren outside cut off. The silence after it was worse. Claire moved first. She crossed to the wall, oxygen checked the flow, then turned the mask so it rested within Mason's sightline instead of above his head. She lowered the overhead light a few inches, angled it away from the main entrance, and pushed the rolling stool out from the foot of the bed. She did not look rushed. That made the room feel stranger, not calmer. Keller entered behind her, pulling gloves over his hands. "Whitaker, this is still a trauma bay," he said, "not a hostage negotiation room." Claire opened a package of gauze with clean, practiced fingers. "Then stop making it look like one." Denny appeared with warm fluids tucked under one arm. "Bay is clear. Security is outside the hall." "Outside the hall or outside the door?" Claire asked. Denny glanced toward the corridor. "Door. Move them back 6 feet." Keller's jaw tightened. "If he is combative, I want security close. If he is combative, their uniforms are gasoline." "Enough," Keller said. Claire looked at him then. Not angry, not pleading, direct. "Doctor, when he comes through those doors, everyone in this room is going to decide what he sees. If he sees people blocking exits, hands coming at him, belts, badges, restraints, and a crowd at the foot of the bed, his body will answer before his mind can. If you want him alive, long enough for your trauma exam, give him a room he can survive." Keller held her stare. For a moment, pride and training fought behind his eyes. Another ambulance door slammed outside. Keller turned toward Denny. "Move security back." Denny did not wait for him to change his mind. Emma felt something shift inside her chest. She had seen Claire calm patients before. She had seen her talk people down from rage, shame, terror, and pain. But this was different. Claire was not soothing the room. She was arranging it as if every chair, every body, every light had tactical weight. The radio crackled again, closer now through the open bay doors. Rescue 3 entering. The automatic doors burst apart. The gurney came in hard wheels, rattling over the threshold, rainwater flying from the paramedics' boots. The smell arrived with it. Wet fabric, blood, road grit, sweat sharpened by fear. Mason Cole was strapped to the cot, but the straps were losing. He was broad through the shoulders, his uniform cut open from collar to waist, the fabric dark and slick against his skin. A pressure dressing covered the upper right side of his chest and shoulder, but blood had soaked through in a spreading black-red bloom. His left flank was wrapped too, the gauze stained through in 2 uneven patches. His face was pale beneath mud and rain jaw, locked eyes burning too bright. One paramedic had both hands pressed into the shoulder wound. The other tried to keep an oxygen mask near Mason's face without getting hit. Mason tore his head away. "Do not put that on me." "Mason," the first paramedic said breathless, "you need oxygen." No mask, no straps, no second location. Keller stepped in from the left. "Staff Sergeant Cole." "I'm Dr. Keller. You are at Mercy Harbor Medical Center." Mason's head snapped toward him. "No." The word came out flat, immediate, already decided. "You sustained significant injuries," Keller said. "We need to assess the bleeding." Mason's eyes flicked from Keller's face to his hands, then to the security officer visible beyond the glass. "Get them out." Keller glanced toward the hall. "They are here for staff safety." Mason surged up with sudden force. The gurney rocked. The paramedic swore as the dressing shifted under his palms. Blood welled fast. "Get them out." A tray clattered as Emma backed into it. Metal instruments chimed across the tile. Mason flinched at the sound, not away from it, but toward it, body turning as if the crash had a direction and a muzzle. Claire stepped into his line of sight, not too close, not with her hands raised. Just there, Staff Sergeant. Mason's eyes landed on her. For one heartbeat, the room paused around that contact. He did not relax. His chest still heaved. His fingers still dug into the cot rail, but his attention fixed. Claire's voice stayed low. "My name is Claire. I am not here to move you. I am not here to take you anywhere. I am standing where you can see me." Mason swallowed hard. Pain passed over his face like a shadow. "Everyone says that. I know." His eyes narrowed. Claire continued, "You are in Savannah. Mercy Harbor, Trauma Bay 3, rain outside. 3 medical staff at the bed, 2 behind me. Security outside the room not coming in." Mason's gaze jumped to the hall again. Claire did not turn around. Denny moved Marcus another step back. A scuff of shoes sounded outside. The security officer disappeared from Mason's direct view. Mason's grip loosened by a fraction. Keller saw it. So did Emma. The first paramedic spoke quickly, trying to get the report out before Mason started fighting again. Male, early 30s. Staff Sergeant Mason Cole. Found off Burnside Road near the marsh access. Severe shoulder laceration, probable ballistic grazing injuries, left flank, significant blood loss. Tachycardic the whole ride. Pressure dropping in transport. He was alert but combative. Kept saying no, transfer team, no restraints, no second location. Unknown full mechanism. We heard possible shots near pickup, but local units were not on scene yet. Keller reached toward Mason's wrist to check the pulse. Mason caught the movement and recoiled. "Do not." Keller stopped with visible effort. "Staff Sergeant, I need to examine you. Number. You are bleeding." Mason gave a breath that was almost a laugh. "I noticed." Claire turned slightly, just enough for Keller to see her face. "Tell him before you touch him." Keller's nostrils flared. "I know how to examine a trauma patient. Not this one." The monitor, lead in Emma's hand, trembled. She tightened her grip around it. Keller looked at Mason, then at the blood spreading under the paramedic's hands. "Fine," he said through his teeth. "Staff Sergeant Cole, I am going to check your radial pulse. My hand is going to touch your left wrist, nothing else." Mason watched him like an animal watching a trap. "Slow," Claire said. Keller moved slowly. His fingers reached Mason's wrist. Mason's breathing hitched, but he did not strike. Keller felt the pulse. His face tightened. Fast and thready. "We need large bore access. Type and cross. Trauma panel. Get pressure going." Emma stepped toward the left arm with an IV kit. Mason turned on her instantly. No needles. Emma froze. Claire shifted her weight, putting herself back into his sight line. Mason. He looked at her eyes, wide, furious, terrified. "You're losing blood," she said. "That makes every threat look closer. The IV stays where you can see it. Left arm. Emma will tell you before she touches you. 1 needle, no restraints, no sedation," he snapped. Keller answered too quickly. "That depends on your condition." Mason's body tensed again. Claire cut in, voice sharper now. "No sedation without warning him first." Keller turned on her. "You do not make that call. Neither do you if he tears open the wound and crashes before the drug hits." The room compressed around the argument. Mason heard it. Claire saw the moment his fear converted into motion. His left hand shot toward Keller, not wild, not confused, fast and trained. Keller stepped back, but not before Mason's fingers caught the edge of his sleeve. "Stay back." The paramedic lost pressure for 1 second. Blood surged. Keller's expression hardened. Sedative now. Emma reached toward the medication tray. "No," Claire said. 1 syllable. Quiet. Absolute. Keller stared at her. "He is a danger to the staff. He is scanning for extraction threat. If you drug him while he thinks he is being taken, he will fight the drug, the straps, and the room until there is nothing left to save. And your plan?" Claire's eyes remained on Mason. "To make him choose to stay." Mason's gaze cut to her. "Don't say that," he rasped. Claire heard something in his voice. Not just fear. Recognition of a phrase, a command, a memory with teeth. She took one step closer. The paramedic looked at her as if she had lost her mind. Denny stopped breathing behind the supply cart. Claire's hands remained visible at her sides, relaxed but ready. "Staff Sergeant Mason Cole," she said. "You are not being transferred. You are not being restrained. You are not in enemy custody. You are bleeding in my trauma bay, and I need you to hold still." Mason's lips pulled back from his teeth. "You don't know anything about custody." "No," Claire said softly. "I know exactly what men sound like when they think the ride is over and the real interrogation is about to begin." Mason froze. The paramedic looked up. Keller's eyes narrowed. Emma felt the air change. Claire took another step close enough now that Mason could see the faint burn scar near the base of her neck, close enough that her voice did not need to travel. Then she said it. "Raven 7 actual. Tide glass 0. Hold the line." The effect was immediate. Mason stopped moving. Not calmed, stopped. His fingers opened against the cot rail. His shoulders dropped an inch, then trembled under the weight of his own body. His eyes locked on Claire, the rage draining out so fast it left something more painful behind. Disbelief. "No," he whispered. Claire did not blink. Mason swallowed. His throat worked like the word hurt him on the way out. "Nobody knows that code." "I do." He stared at her as if the hospital had fallen away and left only her face. "Who are you?" Claire reached for fresh gauze from the tray. "Right now, I am the person keeping you on this bed." She placed her hand over the shoulder dressing and took pressure from the paramedic. Her palm sank into the heat of the wound. Mason flinched hard, but he did not pull away. The paramedic stepped back stunned. Emma whispered Claire. Claire did not look away from Mason. "Stay with me," she said. Mason's breathing shook. Raven 7 died. Claire pressed harder. "Not tonight." His mouth opened. No sound came out. Keller recovered first. "What did you say to him?" "Something that worked." "That is not an answer. It is the only answer that matters while his pressure is falling." Keller looked at the monitor. Heart rate still too fast. Blood pressure ugly. But the room had not exploded. Mason was no longer fighting every hand within reach. His fear had narrowed around Claire, and somehow that made him easier to treat. Keller's face shifted from anger to clinical calculation. "Emma," he said. "IV left arm. Tell him first." Emma moved carefully. "Mason, I'm Dr. Hart. I am cleaning your left arm. You will feel cold first." Mason's eyes stayed on Claire. Claire nodded once. He allowed it. Emma cleaned the skin. His muscles twitched under the wipe. "Needle," she said. His jaw clenched. Claire leaned closer. "Eyes here." Mason obeyed. Emma placed the line. Denny hung warm fluids. Keller ordered blood imaging standby antibiotics and a surgical consult. His voice was quieter now, stripped of some of its usual force. The team moved around the bed with new precision, all of them aware that the wrong motion could break the thin truss holding Mason in place. Claire cut the ruined uniform away from the shoulder. The fabric peeled back, stuck in blood and rain. The wound beneath it was worse than it had looked through the dressing. A long, ragged tear crossed the upper chest into the shoulder muscle deep enough to show pale tissue beneath the red. Bits of gravel and dark thread clung inside the wound. The bleeding pulsed irregularly, not a full arterial spray, but dangerous enough. Keller leaned in, professional instinct taking over. Deep laceration. Possible vessel involvement, need exploration. Mason stiffened at his voice. Claire felt it under her hand. "Dr. Keller is looking," she said before Mason could move. "He is not cutting yet." Keller paused. Then, with visible discipline, he said, "I'm going to examine the wound. No incision. No movement without telling you." Mason's eyes flicked to him. "Not him," Mason said. Keller's face hardened. "I am the trauma tending." Mason's fingers dug into the sheet. "Not him." Emma looked from Keller to Claire. Denny muttered, "Oh hell." Claire spoke before Keller could turn the refusal into a fight. "I will control surface bleeding. Dr. Keller supervises. Emma handles the flank. Denny keeps fluids running. We stabilize first. Keller stared at her. Claire met his eyes. You want him alive or obedient? The question landed hard. Keller glanced at Mason, then at the blood under Claire's hand, then at the monitor. Alive, he said. Claire nodded once and went to work. She irrigated around the wound, not through the deepest part yet. She picked out visible debris with forceps. She packed gauze into the bleeding edge layering pressure with careful force. Mason's face went white. Sweat gathered at his temples and ran through the dirt on his skin. This part hurts, Claire said. It already hurts. This is different. He gave a short, broken breath. You always this comforting? No. Good. Emma looked up from the flank wound, surprised by the faint edge of humor in his voice. Claire did not smile. Left side. Emma focused again. 2 grazing wounds. 1 shallow. 1 deeper track along the lateral flank. Bleeding slowed but still active. No bubbling. Abdomen firm but not rigid. Keep irrigating. Pressure dressing after. Keller listened jaw tight but did not interrupt. Mason watched Claire's face through the pain. You are not just field side, he said. Claire threaded temporary closure material through the needle driver. Save your oxygen. You knew the code. I know many things. No one knows Tide Glass unless they were there, or they studied the dead. The room seemed to still around that sentence. Claire's hand moved without hesitation, but Emma saw the smallest change in her eyes. Mason saw it too. His voice dropped. You were Raven. Claire tied the first temporary stitch with a clean, hard pull. You are concussed, bleeding, and too curious for your condition. That means yes. That means you talk too much. Mason gave a breath that might have been a laugh if pain had not cut through it. Then his left hand drifted toward his waist, searching for a weapon that was no longer there. Claire caught the movement before anyone else noticed. She placed 2 fingers against his wrist, not pinning it, just grounding it. No weapon, she said. No fight. Stay here. His eyes snapped back to hers. For 1 second he looked younger. Not like a staff sergeant. Not like a witness. Just a man who had been awake too long in a place that kept changing shape. They took the courier, he whispered. Keller looked up. What courier? Claire's fingers remained steady. Do not answer yet. Mason ignored her. He had the files. I had the duplicate packet. They knew the route. They knew our count. Emma stopped moving. Denny's hand paused on the fluid bag. Keller's voice lowered. Who knew? Mason's eyes flicked toward the corridor, then to the ceiling camera. Claire saw the fear sharpen. Not here, she said. Mason swallowed. They followed us. The ambulance. I lost sight after the bridge. Claire glanced toward Denny. Ask Marcus to check the ambulance entrance. No one comes through without hospital ID. Denny nodded and moved. Keller leaned closer to Claire. What exactly are we in the middle of? Claire cut another suture tail. A trauma case. That is not what I asked. It is the only part we can treat first. A sound cracked outside. 3 sharp pops. Not thunder. Everyone in the bay flinched except Claire. Mason tried to rise. They're here. His shoulder wound opened at the edge of the fresh closure. Blood spread under Claire's hand. Down, she said. Mason fought the bed-eye's wide breath tearing through his teeth. They tracked the rig. Claire shifted closer, bracing one forearm across the mattress near his chest without forcing him flat. Mason, look at me. He did not. Mason. His eyes jumped to hers. You are inside Mercy Harbor. The door is behind me. The hall is controlled. No one has you. You don't know that. I know this, she said. If you sit up again, you bleed harder. If you bleed harder, you stop talking. If you stop talking, they win. The words reached him. His body trembled under the effort of staying down. Keller looked toward the hall. Security. Denny returned fast, face tight. Marcus heard shots near the outer lot. Police are being called. West access is locked. Claire did not look away from Mason. Good. Move waiting room patients away from the front glass. Already happening. Keller stared at Denny, then at Claire. You ordered that. Denny answered before Claire could. She did. It was a good order. For once, Keller did not argue. The monitor gave a warning chirp. Mason's pressure dipped. Emma spoke quickly, pressure dropping. Keller stepped back into full physician mode. Increase fluids, blood when ready. We need imaging as soon as he is stable. Claire reinforced the shoulder dressing. He is not going to imaging until he can tolerate the room. Keller looked ready to snap again, but Mason spoke first. No machines. Mason Keller said you may have internal injuries. No enclosed rooms, no straps, no transfer. Claire's voice stayed level. No imaging yet. Stabilize first. Keller's eyes flashed. You are not overruling me. Claire finally looked at him. I am telling you the patient you need for imaging will not survive being dragged there while he believes it is an extraction corridor. Mason's jaw tightened at the word extraction. Claire saw the mistake and corrected instantly. Medical hallway, she said to him. Not now. Later. When you can choose it. Mason gave the smallest nod. Keller absorbed the exchange. Something like reluctant understanding crossed his face. Fine, he said. We stables here. Emma secured the flank dressing. Her hands had stopped shaking. Claire noticed. Good work, she said. Emma looked up, startled by the praise. Mason's eyes drifted toward Claire's collar. During the movement of treatment, the neckline of her scrub top had shifted enough to reveal the edge of an old mark near her left collarbone. Not a full tattoo. Just a curve of dark ink, blurred with age, half hidden by scar tissue. His gaze sharpened. No, he whispered. Claire pulled the collar back into place without looking down. You're chasing ghosts. People said Raven 7 had a medic. Claire tightened the pressure wrap. People say a lot when they need campfire stories. They said she kept men alive in black water with one hand broken. Sounds inefficient. They said she ran a line through mortar smoke for 19 minutes. Sounds exaggerated. His voice cracked. They said she died at Tide Glass. Claire's hands paused. Only for the length of one heartbeat. Keller saw it. Emma saw it. Mason saw it most clearly of all. He stared at Claire with something more fragile than fear now. Ma'am, he said. The word fell into the trauma bay like a dropped instrument. Denny looked up. Keller's expression changed. Claire's face closed. Do not call me that. Mason's breathing shook. You are her. I am the nurse keeping pressure on your wound. You are Raven 7. Claire leaned closer. Her voice was quiet enough that the others had to strain to hear it. And you are losing blood on my floor. So if you want answers, earn them by staying alive. Mason shut his eyes. A tear slipped sideways into the dirt at his temple. He seemed furious with it. Claire pretended not to see. That was mercy, Emma realized. Not softness, mercy. Another sound came from the corridor, this one human. A clerk's voice strained and too loud. Dr. Keller. Keller turned. The clerk stood at the far end of the hall, one hand over the receiver at the nurse station, eyes fixed toward the main entrance. There are officers here. Keller stripped off one glove. Local police. The clerk swallowed. No, sir. Federal. Or military. I don't know. They're asking for Staff Sergeant Mason Cole. Mason went rigid beneath Claire's hand. The monitor spiked. Claire looked toward the corridor. Past the rain-streaked glass, past the security officer, past the bright white wash of the nurse station lights. 3 men in dark suits moved through the emergency department with the calm speed of people who expected every door to open before they touched it. Mason's voice came out barely above a breath. They found me. Claire pressed harder over the wound. No, she said. One of the dark-suited men looked straight into Trauma Bay 3. Claire did not move from Mason's side. Mason said it like a man watching a door open in a nightmare he had already survived once. Claire did not turn toward the corridor right away. She kept one hand pressed against the blood-soaked dressing at his shoulder, and the other near his wrist, close enough for him to feel the steady pressure of her presence without being held down. Breathe, she said. Mason's eyes stayed locked on the men moving through the emergency department. They came too fast. Breathe. They tracked the ambulance. Claire leaned closer, not enough to block his sight, only enough to pull his focus back by inches. Mason listened to my voice. You are still on the bed. Your feet are not on the floor. Your hands are empty. No one has touched you except medical staff. His chest rose too quickly. The monitor answered with a sharp warning chirp. Keller glanced from the numbers to the hallway. "Whitaker," he said quietly. "I see them." The men in dark suits did not rush. That was what made them more frightening. Police rushed. Families rushed. Panicked people rushed. These men moved as if the building had already agreed to their presence. People stepped aside before understanding why. A mother in the waiting room pulled her child closer. A registration clerk stopped typing. Denny, returning with extra dressings, paused near the supply cart with her eyes narrowed. The man in front was tall and broad through the chest with close-cut brown hair and a face that looked too controlled to be kind. Rainwater darkened the shoulders of his coat. His badge hung from a black cord around his neck, turned slightly inward, visible enough to suggest authority and hidden enough to prevent questions. Two men followed behind him. One was younger, hard-eyed, and silent. The other was older, gray at the temples, with the posture of a man who had spent more years in uniform than out of it. The lead man stopped at the entrance to Trauma Bay 3. He did not ask permission to enter. He looked past Keller, past Emma, past Denny. His gaze settled on Mason, then shifted to Claire's hand on the wound. For half a second, Claire saw calculation move behind his eyes. Then he spoke. "Captain Bryce Callahan, Federal Military Liaison. I am here to assume custody of Staff Sergeant Mason Cole." No one answered. The trauma bay was too bright. The floor was streaked with rain and blood. Gauze wrappers floated near the wheel of the gurney like white leaves. Mason's breathing scraped through his teeth. The room smelled of saline, copper, and wet wool. Keller straightened. "Captain, this patient is in active trauma care." Callahan glanced at him as if Keller had announced the weather. "I can see that. He is unstable. He is also under federal protection." Claire felt Mason's pulse jump beneath her fingers. "Protection," Mason whispered. And there was so much contempt in the word that Emma looked down. Callahan's attention sharpened. "Sergeant Cole, you are being transferred to a secure medical facility." Mason tried to rise. Pain tore through him. His face drained of color. Blood pushed through the dressing under Claire's palm. "No," Mason said. "No transfer." Claire pressed him back with her voice before she used her hand. "Stay down. They will move me. Not while you're bleeding through my gloves." Callahan took one step into the room. Claire moved. It was not dramatic. She did not lunge or square up like a fighter. She simply shifted from Mason's side into the space between the bed and Callahan. Her right hand stayed near the wound. Her body made a line. Callahan looked at her fully for the first time. "Nurse," he said, "step aside." Claire's face did not change. "The patient is not stable for transfer. I did not ask for your opinion. It is not an opinion." Keller came around the foot of the bed, his expression tight but professional. "Captain, I need to see your authorization." Callahan reached into his coat and removed a folded packet. The movement made Mason's entire body tense. Claire saw his left hand curl around the sheet. "Paper," she said quietly. Mason's eyes flicked to her. "He is holding paper," she said, "not a weapon." Callahan heard her and his mouth tightened, but he handed the packet to Keller. Keller opened it with gloved fingers, scanning the first page. Emma watched his face as he read. It did not relax. "This authorizes secure transport and debrief," Keller said. "It does not override medical clearance. The clearance has been reviewed." "By whom?" Callahan's eyes remained on Mason. "By the proper authority." Keller's voice cooled. "I am the attending physician in this trauma bay, and I am informing you that Staff Sergeant Cole is leaving this facility." "No," Claire said. The word was soft. It struck the room harder than if she had shouted. Callahan turned back to her. A small pause followed the kind, powerful men used when they expected silence to correct itself. It did not. He looked her up and down. Navy scrubs, blood on both gloves, hair pulled back, no rank, no weapon, no visible authority beyond the fact that Mason had not torn the room apart while her hand was on him. "You are obstructing a federal transfer." Claire's eyes stayed level. "He is hypotensive concussed, actively bleeding, and in acute combat shock." If you move him now, you risk hemorrhagic collapse, respiratory compromise, and a violent panic response that could injure staff and kill the patient. Callahan's expression remained flat. That risk has been accepted. By you. By command. Claire took one breath. That risk belongs to the body on that bed. The older man behind Callahan shifted slightly. It was barely anything, a change in weight from one foot to the other, but Claire saw it. She saw his eyes move from Mason to the monitor, then to the soaked dressing, then to her face. He understood enough to be uncomfortable. Callahan did not. "Sergeant Cole," he said, voice hardening, "you are ordered to comply." Mason laughed once. It came out broken and wet. "You were not at Burnside Road." Callahan's jaw moved. "No. You were not in the vehicle when the first round hit. Number. You did not watch Reeves take one through the throat trying to hand me the packet." Emma's face went pale. Denny's lips pressed together. "Callahan said you are in no condition to discuss operational matters." Mason's eyes burned. "I am in exactly the condition you left me in." The words changed the air. Keller looked up from the paperwork. Claire did not move, but something in her eyes sharpened. Callahan stepped farther into the bay. "Enough. Move the bed." The younger man behind him started forward. Mason reacted before anyone touched him. His body surged up from the mattress with raw, damaged force. The shoulder dressing shifted. Fresh blood spread across Claire's wrist. Emma gasped. Keller snapped pressure. Claire was already there. Mason, eyes here. He did not hear her. His stare was locked on the approaching man. No second location. Mason. No second location. Claire changed her voice. Lower. Harder. The sound seemed to come from somewhere older than the hospital. "Cole." His eyes snapped to her. "Hold." He froze, shaking. Claire did not blink. "Good. Stay with me." The younger man stopped in his tracks. Callahan noticed. So did Keller. So did everyone watching through the glass. Claire kept her hand on Mason's wound and spoke without looking away from him. "Dr. Keller, he is opening the shoulder again." Keller moved in at once, pressure dressing in hand. "I have it." Mason flinched at his approach. "Claire said Dr. Keller is applying pressure only. No cutting, no sedation. Pressure only." Keller did exactly that. Mason allowed it barely. Callahan watched the exchange with growing irritation. "You are making this worse." Claire looked at him. "No, you are." His eyes cooled. "I suggest you remember your role." The sentence landed in the room with an ugly, familiar weight. Denny's head turned slowly toward him. Emma's mouth parted. Keller looked like he had been slapped on someone else's behalf. Claire did not react. "My role is to keep him alive. Your role is to follow lawful instruction. My license does not require me to participate in killing a patient by paperwork." Callahan's face hardened. "You are out of line." Claire's voice sharpened by a single degree. "You are out of protocol." For the first time, the older man behind Callahan looked directly at her with real interest. Callahan heard it too. "What protocol?" Claire's hands remained red at Mason's shoulder. "Operational casualty hold." Article 9. Unstable combat witnesses cannot be displaced from active emergency care without clearance from the attending tactical medical authority present on scene. Silence fell. Not hospital silence. Not the pause before an alarm or a question. This was recognition moving through the room at different speeds. Emma looked at Keller. "Is that real?" Keller did not answer right away. His face had gone still the way it had during a difficult diagnosis. At last, he said, "It is not part of civilian trauma training." Callahan's eyes fixed on Claire. "That clause is restricted." Claire said nothing. "It is not taught to night shift nurses." Still nothing. Mason stared at her as if every word had placed another piece of a buried map in front of him. Callahan stepped closer. "Who are you?" Claire met his gaze. "The nurse keeping your witness alive. You are not tactical medical authority." Claire's voice stayed calm. "Then find someone who is and have them clear him. Until then, he stays." The younger man looked to Callahan for direction. The older man did not. He was still studying Claire. His eyes moved to the base of her neck. During the struggle, the collar of her scrub top had shifted slightly. just enough to show a thin edge of old scar tissue near the left collarbone. Not enough for a full mark, only the suggestion of ink beneath fabric. The older man's expression changed. Not much, but enough. He inhaled. "Blackwater Pier," he said quietly. Callahan did not turn Master Sergeant Teague. The older man kept looking at Claire. "Blackwater Pier," he repeated. "Tide Glass Convoy." There was a medic. Claire's face went very still. Hank Bellamy's voice came from the corridor. "Careful, son." Everyone turned. Hank stood near the nurse station with one hand braced on the counter, his bad leg stiff beneath him, his hospital blanket still draped over one shoulder. He had no business being there and every intention of staying. Denny muttered, "Hank, sit down before you fall down." Hank ignored her. His eyes were on Claire. "I knew you had the look," he said. Callahan snapped, "Remove that man from the corridor." "No," Claire said. Callahan stared at her. Claire did not look away from Hank. "He stays where he is unless he blocks care." Hank gave a thin smile. "Wouldn't dream of it." Teague took one slow step forward, not toward Mason, toward Claire. They said she kept black tape around her wrist so the wounded could find her without drawing light. Hank's eyes narrowed. "Matte tape," he said. "Not black tape. Black can still shine if it is cheap. Matte does not." Teague looked toward him. Hank's voice roughened. "You served with men who came through Tide Glass." Teague swallowed. "With men who talked about it after drinking enough to forget they were not supposed to." Callahan turned on him. "Master Sergeant, stand down." Teague's posture stiffened out of old habit, but his eyes stayed on Claire. They called her Nightingale. Claire's jaw tightened. "That was never my name." "No," Teague said softly. "It was what men called you when they did not think you were real." Mason's breath trembled. "Ma'am." Claire closed her eyes for the smallest fraction of a second. When she opened them, the nurse was still there. The calm, the steady hands, the navy scrubs. But something else stood behind her now, something that made even Keller stop looking at her as staff and start looking at her as history. Callahan felt the room slipping. Authority depended on everyone agreeing where it lived. In that moment, it no longer lived entirely with him. He changed tactics. "This is sentimental theater," he said. "It has no bearing on lawful custody." Keller stepped forward. "Captain, this patient remains under my care." Callahan turned to him. "Doctor, you have made your objection clear." "I am not objecting. I am refusing transfer on medical grounds." The words seemed to surprise Keller even as he spoke them. Claire did not look at him, but she heard the difference. Callahan did too. "Choose your position carefully," he said. Keller's face was pale, but his voice held. "I just did." Mason's monitor chirped again. Emma checked the readout. "Pressure is still dropping." Claire turned back to the bed. "Denny, fresh dressing." "Emma, keep the flank secure." "Doctor, he needs to lie flatter." Slowly. Keller nodded. "Mason, Claire said we are lowering the bed. You will feel your shoulder pull. No one is moving you out. Just the bed." Mason's eyes moved from Callahan to Claire. "You promise." The question stripped the room bare. Not tactical, not military. Human. Claire's voice softened, but only enough for him. "I promise." He let them lower the bed. Callahan watched it happen with a rage so controlled it looked almost polite. When the bed settled, Mason's breathing eased by a small measure. Claire replaced the top layer of gauze. Keller helped her secure the pressure wrap. Their hands worked close together for the first time that night without competition. Emma noticed. So did Denny. Callahan did not care. He nodded once to the younger man. This time the man moved faster, not toward Mason's upper body, toward the foot of the bed reaching for the brake release. Claire saw the motion before the hand landed. "Do not touch that bed." The man hesitated. Callahan said, "Move him." The younger man reached again. Claire stepped across his path. She was smaller than him by nearly a foot. Blood stained her gloves. Her scrubbed top was damp at the shoulder where Mason's blood had brushed against her. She looked like a nurse at the end of a bad shift. She also looked impossible to move. "You put hands on this patient," she said, and every second from contact to vital collapse goes into the record. Every witness in this department will document that you moved an unstable trauma patient against medical instruction over attending objection during active hemorrhage and combat shock. The man stopped. He looked at Callahan. Callahan's voice was quiet. You are threatening federal personnel. Claire shook her head once. I am charting future events accurately. Denny made a sound under her breath that might have been approval. Callahan's composure cracked at the edge. This witness is leaving. Mason's eyes flashed. Witness, he said. That is what you call me when people are listening. Callahan looked at him. You should be grateful anyone is listening. Mason's mouth twisted. I was grateful when Reeves gave me the packet before he drowned in his own blood. Emma looked away. Mason kept going, voice low and shaking. I was grateful when the driver kept the truck straight after the windshield went white. I was grateful when Rescue 3 found me before your people did. Callahan said nothing. Claire watched him carefully now. She had seen men lie before. Some lied with panic, some with charm, some with outrage. Callahan lied like a locked door. Flat. Functional. Designed not to show what stood behind it. Keller seemed to sense it too. What packet, he asked. Callahan answered first. Classified material unrelated to your care. Mason gave a broken laugh. Unrelated to why I got shot. Claire placed 2 fingers at his wrist again. Save your strength. He turned his head toward her. If they move me, I disappear. The words made Emma's throat tighten. Claire held his gaze. Then you do not move. Callahan stepped closer to Claire, lowering his voice enough that it was meant for her, not the room. You have no idea what you are interfering with. Claire answered just as softly. I know exactly what men sound like when they are trying to move a body before it can become testimony. For the first time, Callahan's eyes changed. Surprise, brief and cold. Then it was gone. Teague saw it. Hank saw Teague see it. The whole corridor felt like it had leaned in. Callahan straightened. Fine, he said. Hospital administration can witness the transfer. Security can witness it. Your physician can file whatever protest he wants. The order stands. He reached past Claire for the bed rail. Mason recoiled as if struck by current. The pressure dressing tore at the edge. Blood burst fresh under the wrap. Keller moved instantly. Do not touch him. Callahan's hand stayed on the rail. Claire's voice changed. Until that moment, it had been measured. Firm, controlled. Now, it carried something colder, older, stripped clean of bedside warmth. Release the rail. Callahan turned his head slowly. No. Claire reached up with her cleanest fingers, caught the collar of her scrub top and pulled it aside just enough. The room went silent. Over her left chest, crossing old scar tissue, was a faded black raven wing. Beneath it sat the Roman numeral 7. The ink was blurred by years' heat salt and skin that had healed badly around it. It was not decorative. It did not look chosen in a parlor under soft lights. It looked earned in a place where names were liabilities and symbols carried the weight of orders no one wrote down. Teague stepped back. His face changed completely. Hank lowered his chin, not in worship, not in drama, but in the reflexive respect of an old soldier seeing a flag from a battlefield, no civilian map recorded. Emma covered her mouth. Keller stared at the tattoo, then at Claire, and for once had no words ready. Callahan let go of the rail. Mason looked at the mark like a man seeing a grave open. They said Raven 7 was erased, he whispered. Claire released the collar. The fabric fell back into place. They said many things. Mason's eyes shone with pain and recognition. They left you off the dead list. Claire looked at him. Or they buried me deeper. Callahan's color shifted slightly. Not fear. Calculation under pressure. Your file was sealed, he said. Claire met his eyes. So were the mistakes. Teague swallowed. Ma'am. Callahan snapped, do not. Teague's gaze stayed on Claire. Sir, we need to reassess. No one asked for your assessment. Claire looked at Teague. What is your name? His shoulders straightened before he could stop them. Master Sergeant Ray Teague. You were at Tide Glass. No, ma'am. But I served with men who were. That word moved through the room. Ma'am. Not flattery, not confusion. Recognition. Callahan heard it and hated it. You are a civilian nurse now, he said to Claire. Whatever you were before does not give you jurisdiction over an active command matter. Claire's gaze cooled. Then, active command can send someone brave enough to put their own name on the order. The sentence struck him cleanly. Denny went very still. Emma looked at Keller. Keller looked at Callahan and finally seemed to understand that the danger in the room was not Mason. Callahan's voice dropped. You are making an enemy of people you do not want watching you. Claire did not blink. They have been watching for years. They were just disappointed I stayed quiet. Mason's hand found the sheet again, gripping hard as another wave of pain passed through him. The monitor chirped irregularly. Emma moved closer. Heart rate is spiking. Keller snapped back to the bed. Pressure. Still low. Claire turned fully away from Callahan as if he had become background noise. Denny, another warm bag. Emma, recheck flank dressing. Doctor, I need him flat and talking as little as possible. Keller answered without hesitation. Done. That one word changed something. Claire heard it. Callahan heard it. The room had chosen a center, and it was no longer the badge at the door. Callahan stepped back exactly 1 pace. We will wait outside until he is movable. Claire looked up from Mason's shoulder. He is not your property. Callahan ignored her. The moment he is medically cleared, he transfers. No, Mason whispered. Claire leaned closer. Save your breath. His eyes searched her face. The panic had changed shape. It was no longer the wild fear of being trapped. It was the fear of believing someone and paying for it. They know about Tide Glass, he said. Claire's hand paused, only for a fraction of a second. Callahan saw it. Mason saw it. Teague saw it too. Claire recovered and pressed the dressing tighter. Not another word. Mason shook his head slightly. They said the name in the truck, like a warning, like they knew what it meant. Claire's face did not move, but her eyes turned distant for one breath. Keller leaned in. Claire. She looked at him. He did not ask who she was. Not then. Not in front of Mason. Not in front of Callahan. Instead, he said, "What do you need?" Claire held his gaze for half a second. A secure room. No exterior windows. Limited access. One controlled door. Nobody interviews him. Nobody moves him. Nobody gives medication without direct verbal confirmation from the team in the room. Keller nodded. Observation 2. It has a locking door. Callahan stepped forward. You do not have authorization to restrict access. Keller turned to him. I do. Callahan's eyes narrowed. Keller's voice did not rise. My patient is unstable. My department is not a hallway for your extraction. Claire looked at Mason. You hear that? Mason gave the smallest nod. Say it back. He swallowed. Not moving. Good. Denny returned with fluids. Emma adjusted the line. Keller checked the dressing and monitor with a focus Claire had not seen from him before, not because he had lacked skill, but because now his attention had no pride in the way. Outside the bay, Callahan turned sharply toward the corridor and pulled out a secure phone. Teague remained for 1 second longer. His eyes found Claire's. There was apology there. Also fear. Claire gave him nothing. He followed Callahan out. The younger man went with them, but slower now, careful not to brush against the bed, careful not to meet Mason's eyes. The moment they cleared the threshold, the department exhaled in pieces. A nurse behind the glass whispered something to a clerk. Marcus, from security, shifted his radio from one hand to the other, looking at Claire as if he had worked beside a sealed file for 3 years and only just noticed the stamp. Hank Bellamy limped closer until Denny blocked him with one hand. Not another step, she said. Hank looked past her to Claire. Raven 7, he said quietly. Claire did not answer. He studied her face, and the old sharpness in his eyes softened into something like grief. I hope somebody said your name right, he said. For a moment, Claire's mouth tightened. Then Mason groaned. The room snapped back to the body on the bed. Claire returned to work. Transport monitor, she said. Emma moved. portable oxygen. Denny grabbed it. Marcus Clare called. The security officer appeared at the door. "Yes, we are moving to Observation 2. You walk ahead. Keep the hall clear. No one approaches the bed without being named first." Marcus nodded once. "Yes, ma'am." He seemed to realize what he had said only after saying it. Claire ignored it. Keller moved the monitor himself. Denny lifted the IV bag. Emma took the left side of the bed. Claire stayed on Mason's right where he could see her without turning his head. "Mason," she said, "we are going through the hall. Not outside, not to transport. Observation room only." His lips parted. His skin had gone gray beneath the mud. "Callahan. Outside. He will not stop." "I know. You cannot block all of them." Claire checked the dressing, then looked into his eyes. "I do not need to block all of them. I need to keep you alive long enough for the truth to become harder to kill." Mason stared at her. Then, through pain, through blood loss, through the terror trying to pull him under, he gave one short nod. They began to move. The gurney rolled out of Trauma Bay 3 and into the corridor. The waiting room had gone strangely quiet. Patients and families watched from plastic chairs, their faces lit by television glow and stormlight. A little girl, holding a stuffed rabbit, stared at Mason's blood-stained uniform until her mother turned her gently away. Callahan stood near the ambulance entrance phone, pressed to his ear. He watched the transfer through the glass reflection, never fully facing them. Claire saw him. Callahan saw her see him. Neither spoke. As they passed the nurse station, Hank gripped the counter and murmured, "This place got itself a war tonight." Claire did not slow. "Then keep civilians out of the line of fire." Hank's smile was grim. "Yes, Commander." Emma nearly missed a step. Keller glanced at Claire but said nothing. The secure observation room waited at the end of the inner hall. Plain walls. One bed. One monitor. One cabinet. No exterior window. A second door led to a small supply alcove that locked from the inside. Claire scanned it once before the gurney crossed the threshold. Bed to the far wall, head angled toward the door. Leave space on the right. No crowding. Keller followed without question. They transferred Mason carefully. Every move was announced before it happened. Sheet, shoulder, hip, lift, turn, down. Mason's face went white. He bit back the sound until it shook in his throat. Claire leaned close. "Still here?" His eyes opened. "Still here?" "Good." The room settled around him. Denny secured the IV. Emma checked the flank dressing. Keller examined the shoulder again and looked unhappy with what he found. "He needs imaging and surgical repair." Claire nodded. "When he's stable enough." Keller looked at the monitor. "He's not there yet." "No." For once there was no fight in it. A knock came at the door. Marcus opened it just enough to show his face. "Captain Callahan is requesting access." Mason's hand clenched around the sheet. Claire said denied. Marcus nodded. A pause. He says command is on the line. Claire removed her bloody gloves. "Then command can learn patience." Marcus vanished. Emma stared at Claire with questions gathering behind her eyes. Keller had them too. Denny had fewer questions and more anger. Mason watched Claire like a man afraid she might disappear if he blinked. The low thump came then. At first it could have been thunder moving over the coast. Then it came again. Deeper, measured. Too steady for weather. The windowless room had no view outside, but the sound traveled through the ceiling and into the bones of the hospital. Rotor wash. Heavy aircraft. Close enough to make the fluorescent lights tremble. Emma looked up. "That is not hospital transport." Claire stood beside Mason's bed, blood drying dark on her wrist. "No," she said. The rotors grew louder over Mercy Harbor. "It is not." The rotors kept coming. They filled the ceiling first, then the walls, then the bed frame beneath Mason Cole. The sound pushed through Mercy Harbor Medical Center like a second pulse, low and heavy, shaking loose dust from vents no one had cleaned in years. In the observation room, the fluorescent lights trembled in their plastic cases. Mason's eyes opened wide. His fingers dug into the sheet. Claire saw the panic rise before it reached his face. "Mason," she said. He did not answer. The sound had taken him somewhere else. His pupils widened, his jaw locked, his left shoulder lifted off the mattress as if his body had decided to run without permission. Claire moved closer, entering the space where he could see her without turning his head. "Mercy Harbor," she said. "Savannah. Observation 2. You are inside. You are not on the road." His breath came through his teeth. "Aircraft. I hear it. Extraction. Not yours." He looked at her then, and there was nothing trained or hardened in his face, only the raw, exhausted fear of a man who had survived too much by never trusting the sound of rescue. "How do you know?" Claire held his gaze. "Because if they came for you, they would not land on the roof where everyone can count the blades." That reached him. Not comfort. Logic. His chest still rose too fast, but the line of his body softened by one small degree. Keller looked toward the ceiling. His own face had lost color, but his voice remained controlled. "Hospital helipad is not cleared for outside military transport without authorization." Denny stood at the cabinet with fresh gauze in one hand. "Tell that to whoever is parking a war machine above pediatrics." Emma checked Mason's blood pressure again and frowned. "He is still too low." "Keep fluids going," Keller said. Claire did not look away from Mason. "Any dizziness?" Mason gave a shallow laugh that ended in a grimace. "Feels like the room is floating." "Good. That means you can still describe it." "Is that your standard?" "For you tonight, yes." His mouth twitched, but pain erased the expression before it became a smile. Another tremor moved through the ceiling. The rotors began to slow. The deep thumping changed rhythm, stretching out between beats until the whole hospital seemed to listen. A hard knock hit the observation room door. Marcus opened it, only a few inches just as Claire had ordered. His broad face appeared in the gap, tense and damp with sweat. "Dr. Keller." "Claire. There are uniformed officers coming down from the roof." Callahan's voice carried from the hall behind him. "Open the room." Marcus did not move. Claire took one step toward the door. "Names." Marcus glanced away, then back. "One says Colonel James Alder." The name struck the room differently. Callahan's pressure had felt like a locked door. This felt like an old file being opened. Mason's eyes moved to Claire. She gave nothing away. Keller noticed anyway. "You know him." Claire removed her blood-stained gloves slowly. "I know the name. That is not what I asked." "No," she said, "it is not." Mason whispered Alder was real. Claire looked at him. "You heard of him." Everyone heard of Alder if they worked classified transport. "Nobody met him." Denny muttered, "That is comforting in absolutely no way." Claire reached for a clean pair of gloves. "Marcus, no one enters until I say." Marcus nodded once and shut the door again. Outside voices moved in the hall. Callahan's was sharp-clipped angry beneath the polish. Another voice answered him. Lower, older, not louder, but the hallway seemed to make room for it. Keller stepped beside Claire. "This is still my patient." Claire looked at him. "Yes?" He blinked, almost startled by the answer. She continued, "And right now, that matters more than anything else you have ever said in this building." Keller absorbed that. A few hours earlier, he might have bristled. Now, he only nodded. "Then I need facts." Claire flexed the new gloves over her fingers. "So do I." The door opened again. Marcus stood aside. Colonel James Alder entered without hurry. He was in his late 50s, perhaps older, with silver at the temples and a face cut by lines that looked earned rather than aged. His uniform was clean, but not ceremonial. Rain darkened the shoulders. He carried no visible weapon, no dramatic entourage, only 2 uniformed personnel behind him, and a quietness that made Callahan's authority look suddenly young. Callahan entered behind him, furious beneath restraint. "Colonel, this patient is under federal movement order." Alder did not look at him. His eyes went first to Mason, then to the monitor, then to the dressing at the shoulder, then to Keller. It was the quick assessment of a man who did not need to prove he understood a room. Attending physician. Keller straightened. Dr. Grant Keller. Is Staff Sergeant Cole medically fit for transfer? No. The answer came without hesitation. Alder looked at Claire. For the first time since entering Mercy Harbor, Claire's face changed. Not much. Only enough for Emma to see that whatever lived between Claire and the past had recognized a footprint. Alder's gaze settled on her collar, then her eyes. Sergeant Whitaker. The room went still. Claire did not salute. I am a registered nurse. Alder gave a small nod. Tonight you appear to be both. Callahan cut in. Sir Nurse Whitaker has obstructed custody, interfered with transfer, cited restricted protocol, with outstanding and compromised command authority in front of civilian staff. Alder finally looked at him. Has the patient died? Callahan's mouth tightened. No, sir. Then perhaps her interference had clinical value. Keller looked down for half a second as if hiding an expression he did not want to explain. Mason spoke from the bed, voice rough. Colonel. Alder turned to him. Staff Sergeant Cole. Mason swallowed. The motion caused pain to cross his face. If you move me with him, I am dead before morning. Callahan snapped. That is paranoia caused by trauma. Claire said it is a credible fear until proven otherwise. Alder looked at Keller. Doctor. Keller's jaw shifted. He has severe blood loss. Multiple wounds, possible concussion. Acute combat stress response, and he has demonstrated panic escalation when faced with forced movement. Medically and behaviorally, he is not safe for transfer. Alder looked to Emma. You are. Dr. Emma Hart. Do you concur? Emma's eyes flicked once to Keller, then to Claire, then to Mason. Yes, sir, fully. Denny added from the cabinet. For whatever a night nurse is worth, I concur too. Alder glanced at her. Night nurses are often worth more than entire briefings. Denny blinked. Claire did not. Callahan took one step forward. Colonel, with respect, the order came through command channels. With respect, Captain, I asked medical questions and received medical answers. Alder looked back to Claire. Your assessment. Claire stood beside Mason's bed. He needs blood imaging when stable surgical repair of the shoulder evaluation for internal injury and controlled access. He is also a protected witness with an active threat history and a credible fear of unauthorized removal. He stays here. How long? 48 hours minimum before any transfer decision and only after reassessment. Callahan's voice hardened. That is unacceptable. Alder's eyes did not leave Claire. Can Mercy Harbor secure him? Claire answered before Keller could. With cooperation, yes. Alder looked at Keller. Doctor. Keller drew a slow breath. Yes. The words settled in the room like a door closing. Alder reached into the folder carried by one of the officers behind him. He removed a document, signed it against the wall counter, and handed it to Keller, first not Callahan. Temporary medical security hold. Staff Sergeant Cole remains under hospital care for 48 hours. All outside access is restricted. Dr. Keller remains attending physician. Nurse Whitaker is designated primary trauma liaison for patient communication and combat stress management. Callahan went rigid. She has no active status. Alder looked at him. Her inactive file has more authority than your active mistake. No one spoke. The sentence did not echo. It simply landed and stayed. Mason let out a breath that shook through his whole body. Claire looked at Alder. My file was supposed to be sealed. It was. Then why are you here? Alder's face gave nothing away. Because sealed things have a way of bleeding through paper. Callahan's phone vibrated in his hand. He glanced at it, then at Alder. Sir Higher Command is demanding movement. Alder held out his hand. Callahan hesitated. Alder waited. After 1 second too long, Callahan handed him the phone. Alder listened without expression. No, he said. A voice buzzed angrily through the speaker, too faint to distinguish. Alder listened again. No, he repeated. Another pause. Then put your name on a written order directing transfer against current medical judgment and send it to the hospital legal office while I stand here with the patient, the attending physician, and 7 witnesses. The buzzing stopped. Alder ended the call and handed the phone back to Callahan. Your command has gone quiet. Denny whispered. Funny how that works. Keller looked at her. Denny lifted one shoulder. What it is. Mason's eyes were heavy now. Blood loss and pain were pulling him under in slow waves, but he fought it with stubborn violence. Claire saw the effort. Mason stopped wrestling the ceiling. His eyes shifted to her. "Can't sleep." "I did not say sleep. I said stop spending strength you do not have. They will come back." "Yes." The honesty made Emma look up. Claire continued, "That is why you are going to tell us enough while you can still talk clearly." Alder stepped closer to the foot of the bed. "Staff Sergeant Cole, I need a brief account. Only what matters. Names, if you have them. Locations, cargo." Mason looked at Claire. She nodded once. "Not permission." Anchor. Mason closed his eyes for one breath, then opened them. Convoy left Fort Stewart under temporary reroute orders. 2 vehicles, 1 courier, 1 contractor liaison, 2 drivers, me. Keller pulled the stool closer, lowering himself to Mason's eye level without crowding him. Emma had never seen him do that before. Mason continued in pieces, each sentence costing him. Courier was Warrant Officer Daniel Reeves. He carried a sealed packet and a duplicate drive. Procurement records. Field medical kits marked delivered but never received. Armor plates failing inspection but billed as combat ready. Fuel contracts paid through shell vendors. Communications gear signed for by men already dead. Denny's face changed. Dead men signed forms. Mason's eyes stayed on the ceiling. Dead men are quiet. No one answered that. Alder asked where was the packet going. To an investigator outside post command. Name. Mason's lips pressed together. Claire saw him evaluate the room again. Alder, Callahan, Teague outside the door, Keller, Emma, Denny, Marcus beyond the glass. Trust was not a switch. It was a wound asked to open. Claire leaned slightly into his line of sight. "You do not need to give the name if it puts someone alive at risk." Alder looked at her but did not object. Mason breathed out. Reeves said the files tied back to Tide Glass. The room changed. Alder's face did not move, but his eyes darkened. Claire's gloved hand tightened around the bed rail. Keller saw it. Emma saw it. Callahan saw it and looked suddenly too interested. Mason kept going. "The reroute came 5 minutes before we hit Burnside Road. Supposed traffic obstruction. There was no obstruction. Just marsh on both sides, no civilians, bad visibility." His throat worked. Claire reached for a straw and held water to his lips. Small sip. He drank, winced, continued. "First round took the lead windshield. Driver kept us straight. Second vehicle tried to reverse and got boxed. Reeves was hit before he got his sidearm clear. Contractor was gone before I saw him fall. Maybe dead. Maybe not." Alder's voice lowered. "What did Reeves give you?" "Duplicate packet. He shoved it inside my vest and told me not to trust the transfer team." Callahan's expression tightened almost invisibly. Claire turned toward him. "Transfer team." Callahan said nothing. Mason's gaze slid to Callahan. He said those words before he died. The monitor chirped. Emma checked it, then adjusted the line. Heart rate climbing. Claire placed 2 fingers at Mason's wrist. Enough detail. Not enough dying. Mason gave a shallow breath. One more. Claire did not like it, but she waited. The shooters knew our vehicle count. They knew the courier sat rear right. They knew the packet existed. Somebody inside gave us up. Alder looked at Callahan. Callahan stared back. "Do not look at me like I planned an ambush," he said. Mason's voice was barely above a whisper. "No, you arrived for the part after." The words landed like a blade laid flat on the table. Keller stood. "This patient needs blood now." Emma checked the door. Blood bank called. "First unit is on the way." Denny moved to the cabinet. "I will get another pressure set." Alder turned to one of his officers. "Secure the hall. No one enters without Dr. Keller or Nurse Whitaker clearing them by name. Pull hospital camera feeds and preserve them." Callahan stepped toward him. "Colonel, I have a separate chain of authority." Alder looked at him. "Then stand very still inside it." Teague appeared in the doorway behind Marcus. He did not cross the threshold. "Sir." Callahan turned sharply. "Not now." Teague's eyes went to Alder, then Claire. Sir, with permission I need to report something. Alder nodded. Speak. Teague swallowed once. The extraction order Callahan received listed Mercy Harbor before Rescue 3 called Destination. The room went quiet again. Marcus looked from one officer to another. Emma froze with tape in her hand. Keller said very softly, "How is that possible?" No one answered. Teague continued, voice tight. It also listed the patient as secured for transport, not active trauma. Claire looked at Callahan. You expected him controlled before he arrived. Callahan's face became stone. I received a movement packet. I did not write it. Who sent it? Alder asked. Callahan's jaw worked. Command Operations. Name. I do not have one attached. Alder's eyes sharpened. You accepted an unsigned operational movement order for a wounded witness tied to procurement fraud and a classified casualty reference. Callahan said the channel was valid. Claire's voice was cold. So was the route change. That struck him. For a second, anger flared through the polish. You do not know what you are talking about. Claire stepped closer to the foot of the bed. I know what it looks like when logistics become a graveyard. Alder turned to her. Claire. The use of her first name pulled the room tighter. She looked at him. The rotors above had stopped, but she heard them anyway. Not in the ceiling, in memory. Keller must have seen something on her face because his voice softened. Claire, what is tide glass? Mason closed his eyes. Alder looked down. Callahan stared at the wall. Only Claire stayed standing. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she turned back to the patient because that was easier than turning toward the past. Tide glass was a classified rescue operation near the Gulf, she said. Officially, it was clean. Her voice did not shake. That means the report said enemy contact neutralized convoy recovered 0 friendly losses. Emma's brow tightened. But Raven 7 died there. Claire looked at her. No, that was the lie after the lie. The room held its breath. Claire continued. Some died there. Some died after. Some were listed under different operations. Some were transferred into files no family could read. Some came home and learned they were easier to manage if the world thought the unit had never existed. Hank's voice came from the hallway quieter than before. Sweet mercy. Claire did not look toward him. Tide glass 0 was the final report code. 0 friendly losses. Her mouth tightened. 0 became a shovel. Emma's eyes glistened, but she did not speak. Keller looked at Claire as if every small thing he had dismissed over the past year had returned with blood on it. Mason opened his eyes. They left you. Claire's jaw tightened. Not at first. Alder looked down. Claire saw it. Pain moved through her face so quickly it was almost invisible. At first, they needed us quiet. Then they needed us gone. Then they needed us dead on paper. Mason whispered Reeves said the same network was still operating. Claire nodded slowly. Men died waiting for equipment that existed in inventory reports. Medical packs, radio batteries, armor, evac supplies. Every missing crate became a signature. Every signature became money. Keller looked sick. And the hospital is now holding the man who can prove it. Alder answered. Yes. Callahan said allegedly. Denny snapped. He is bleeding through allegedly. Keller turned toward her. Denny lifted both hands. I am not wrong. Alder looked at Callahan. You are removed from direct patient access pending review. Callahan's eyes flared. On what authority? Mine. You cannot sideline me based on trauma room gossip. Alder stepped close enough that Callahan finally had to look up. I can sideline you because a movement order predicted a destination before the rescue call, because a witness claims a dead courier warned him against a transfer team, because you attempted to move an unstable patient over medical objection, and because every instinct I have left says you are either compromised or careless. Neither belongs near that bed. Callahan went silent. Teague stood in the doorway, pale but steady. Alder looked at him. Master Sergeant Teague, you remain available for statement. Yes, sir. Callahan's head snapped toward him. Teague did not look away. Mason's breath hitched. Claire turned instantly. Pain. He nodded once tight. Keller moved to the medication tray. "Mason," he said, voice controlled and careful, "I am preparing pain medication. Low dose, no sedation. Claire will tell you before it goes in." Mason's eyes found Claire. She nodded. "Low dose," she said. "You stay awake. Promise." "Promise." Keller drew the medication, checked it with Emma, and handed it to Claire. Claire held the syringe where Mason could see it. Going into the IV now. He watched every second. When the medication entered the line, his shoulders lowered by a fraction. The pain did not leave him, but it stepped back from his throat. Keller looked at Claire. "Thank you." It was quiet, awkward. Not enough for everything, but something. Claire accepted it with a single nod. Then the computer beside the wall chimed. Emma glanced toward it. "That is the chart." Keller turned. The screen had woken from sleep. The patient record was open, though no one in the room had touched the keyboard. A new order populated across the page. Transfer authorized. Physician approval. Grant Keller, M.D. Keller stepped toward the computer. "I did not enter that." Denny moved beside him. "Maybe it is old." Keller's face hardened. "The timestamp is now." Emma looked at the screen. "It says transport status medically cleared." Mason's eyes opened. Claire felt the room tighten again. Keller grabbed the mouse, clicked into the order, then stopped. His voice was low with fury. "That is my login. Denny said you were in here. I was standing beside the bed." Emma looked toward the ceiling camera. Alder turned to his officer. "Disconnect external access." The officer moved fast, speaking into a radio. Callahan, near the door, said nothing. Claire watched him. He looked too still. Not surprised enough. Keller turned from the screen, anger flushing his face. "They forged my clearance while he is lying here unstable." Claire moved toward the room door and looked through the narrow glass panel into the hall. Staff clustered near the nurse station. Marcus stood guard. Teague remained near Alder's officer. Callahan was outside the immediate room now, half turned away, his phone dark in his hand. Nothing looked wrong. That was the problem. Claire's eyes moved across the corridor. Doorways, hands, badges, shoes. She looked at the medication alcove, empty. She looked at the reflection in the glass frame opposite the hall. A man in green scrubs stood near the supply corridor with a medication tray. His badge hung too high. His shoes were wrong. Clean black soles. Tactical tread. He turned his face away when Claire looked. Claire's voice went flat. "Lock the medication cabinet." Denny followed her gaze. "What?" "Now." Denny slammed the cabinet shut and keyed the lock. Claire spoke without turning. "Emma, stay with Mason's airway. Dr. Keller, do not let anyone touch the IV." Marcus closed the hall. Marcus looked toward the man in scrubs. The man began walking faster. Not running. Walking with purpose. Alder's officer stepped toward him. "Sir, identify yourself." The man in scrubs smiled. It was wrong, too calm, too empty. Then the lights went out. For 3 seconds, Mercy Harbor disappeared. In the dark, Mason made a sound that was not a word. Claire moved by memory. Her hand found the IV line. Her shoulder hit the bed rail. Keller cursed beside her. "Emma said I have him." Denny's voice came from the cabinet. Door. A body moved in the hall. Shoes squeaked against tile. The lights snapped back. The security camera above the observation room door hung dark, its small red indicator dead. Marcus was turned toward the corridor, radio raised. Alder's officer had one hand on his sidearm not drawn yet. The man in scrubs was gone. Denny opened the door just enough to look out, then shut it again with her back against it. Her face had lost all humor. Claire. Claire kept one hand on Mason's IV line and the other on the bed rail. Denny swallowed. "We have a man in scrubs who does not belong to us." Denny said it with her back pressed against the door, one hand flat on the metal frame, the other still gripping the handle. Her face had lost all color beneath the harsh light. Behind her, the observation room seemed too small for the number of heartbeats inside it. Mason stared at the door. The medication in his line had taken the sharpest edge off the pain, but not enough to make him dull. His eyes were open and clear in the worst possible way. Fear had burned away the fog. What remained was recognition. I saw him, he whispered. Claire turned from the IV line to his face. Where? The bridge. The room went still. Keller stepped closer to the bed. Mason, are you sure? Mason swallowed, and even that hurt him. Same walk, same shoulders. He was at the second vehicle after Reeves went down. Emma's hand tightened around the oxygen tubing. He is inside the hospital. Claire looked at the door, then at the dead camera above it. The red indicator light stayed dark. Not a power failure, not an accident. Someone had reached into the hospital's nervous system and pinched a nerve. Alder's officer outside the room spoke into his radio voice, clipped and controlled. Marcus answered from farther down the hall. Shoes moved, doors opened. Staff whispered and went silent when they realized silence was safer. Callahan stood near the corridor junction, half lit by the nurse station glow. His face was unreadable. His hands were visible. His phone was dark. He looked less like a man caught in a mistake and more like a man waiting to learn which part of the mistake could still be useful. Claire saw him watching. Keller saw Claire see him. "What do we do?" Emma asked. Claire did not answer at once. She listened, not to the obvious sounds, not the murmurs or radios or the rain hitting the roof vents. She listened underneath them, a cartwheel turning somewhere near the supply corridor, a cabinet opening, a soft click, metal against metal. The man in scrubs was not trying to run. He was trying to reach something. Claire turned to Denny. Medication access. Locked. Crash cart. Denny's eyes flicked toward the hall, outside the room. "Move it inside." Keller looked at the door. "That exposes the room." Claire shook her head. "He is not here for the room. He is here for the line, the meds, or the chart." Mason's breathing changed. "The IV," he said. Claire looked back at him. His eyes did not leave the door. At the bridge, they checked bodies. One of them had a pouch. Needles, vials. They were not just making sure we were dead. Emma went pale. Keller's jaw hardened. They were dosing survivors. Claire's hand closed around the IV tubing. "No one touches this line." Alder stepped into the room, controlled but sharpened. "Hospital security is sealing the interior corridor. Local police are 2 minutes out. My people are checking stairwells." Claire looked at him. "Your people know hospital badges." Alder held her gaze for half a second. "Not well enough. Then they follow hospital staff, not the other way around." Callahan's voice cut through from the hallway. "That is absurd." Claire turned her head. Callahan stood beyond Marcus, close enough to hear, not close enough to enter. "You lost track of a hostel inside a hospital," Claire said. "Absurd has already had a busy night." His eyes narrowed. "Alder," said Captain, "step away from the patient area. I am part of the response. You are part of the review." Callahan's mouth tightened, but he stepped back. Not far. Claire looked at Hank Bellamy, who had somehow returned to the nurse station with his blanket half falling from one shoulder and stubbornness holding the rest of him upright. "Hank." He lifted his chin. "Get civilians behind the second set of doors. Keep them low. No one stands in the glass." Denny snapped, "You are not giving him a job." Claire kept her eyes on Hank. "He already has one." Hank's old face broke into a grim smile. "Yes, ma'am." Denny cursed under her breath, but she opened the door just enough for Hank to hear the rest. "Room 4 has 2 kids," Claire said. "The mother panics if people run. Tell her there is a storm protocol. Use those words." Hank nodded once and limped away with more purpose than balance. Keller stared at Claire. "You just deployed my wound care patient." "He was already deployed. I gave him direction." For a breath, something almost like laughter touched Denny's face. It vanished when footsteps sounded near the supply corridor. Marcus's voice came sharp from the hall. "Stop there. Badge forward." A man answered, calm and annoyed. "Pharmacy." "I was called for medication verification." Denny looked at Claire. Claire moved toward the door. Keller caught her wrist. Not hard, just enough. "No." Claire looked down at his hand. He released her immediately. His voice lowered. "You are not body armor." "No," Claire said. "I am the only one he has already underestimated." She opened the door before Keller could answer. The hallway outside Observation 2 had become a strange and narrow battlefield. Nurses stood at doorways, not hiding, not crowding. Alder's officer guarded the far end near imaging prep. Marcus stood between the observation room and the supply corridor, shoulders wide, one hand on his radio. The crash cart sat against the wall 20 feet away. A man in green scrubs stood beside it. He wore a surgical cap pulled low and a blue mask hanging loose beneath his chin. In his hands was a medication tray. His ID badge clipped high on his chest, turned outward now, but too new, too clean, too perfectly visible. Claire noticed the shoes again. Black soles, tactical tread, no hospital scuff, no spilled saline, no life. The man smiled. Someone requested pain medication review. Claire walked 3 steps into the hall and stopped. No one requested you. His smile did not change. Pharmacy received an override. Name. He tilted the tray slightly as if the plastic cups and vials should answer for him. Ma'am, I'm just trying to do my job. Claire felt Mason watching through the narrow door gap behind her. She kept her voice even. Then say your name. The man's eyes moved past her toward the observation room. That was enough. Marcus stepped forward, badge. The man shifted his weight. Claire saw the movement before the tray left his hand. Down. Marcus dropped his shoulder as the tray came flying. Plastic cups burst against the wall. A vial shattered on the floor. Clear liquid spread across the tile. The man lunged for the room. Claire moved into him, not away. He expected her to retreat. Most people did when attacked in a hallway. She stepped inside his reach, drove the rolling stool with one foot into his knee, and used his own forward motion against him. His leg buckled. His shoulder slammed into the wall hard enough to crack the badge clip. But he was trained too. His hand came up fast, gripping something small and silver. A syringe. Emma gasped from inside the room. Keller shouted Claire. The man twisted toward the doorarm extending. Not toward Claire. Toward the gap. Toward Mason's 4th line. Claire caught his wrist with both hands and drove it down against the metal edge of the crash cart. The syringe skittered from his fingers, bounced once, and rolled beneath the cart. He struck her across the face with his free hand. The sound snapped through the corridor. Claire's head turned with the impact. Her cheek went red. She did not fall. Her eyes came back colder than before. No one touches the line. She hooked her foot behind his damaged knee and shoved. Marcus hit him from the side a heartbeat later. The man went down hard, face first, one arm pinned beneath Marcus's weight. Alder's officer rushed in and secured his wrists with flex cuffs. The man fought for 3 seconds. Then he stopped breathing through his nose, eyes flat against the tile. Claire crouched and picked up the fallen syringe with a gauze pad, careful not to touch the needle. Keller appeared in the doorway, one hand still on Mason's bed rail, obeying the order he had been given even while every instinct pulled him toward the hallway. "What is it?" he asked. Claire looked at the clear fluid inside. Not pain medication. Alder took it from her with a gloved hand and passed it to his officer. "Evidence bag, now." Callahan moved closer from the corridor junction. "What happened?" Teague stepped in front of him. Callahan's eyes flashed. Teague did not. "No, sir?" The words cut through the hall. Callahan stared at him. Teague's face was pale but steady. "You do not go near that patient. I outrank you." "Yes, sir." "Then move." Teague's jaw tightened. I said no. For one silent second, the two men faced each other in the washed-out hospital light. Callahan seemed almost more offended by the refusal than by the attack itself. Alder turned toward them. "Captain Callahan, you are relieved from all operational involvement at this site." Callahan gave a short, humorless laugh. "You do not have the authority to do that." Alder looked at his officer. "Secure his phone." Callahan stepped back. "Absolutely not." Teague spoke quietly. "Sir, do not make this worse." Callahan turned on him. "You have no idea what this is." Teague's expression shifted, grief and anger meeting in the lines around his eyes. "I have a pretty clear idea. Orders that arrive unsigned. A transfer team named before the ambulance destination. A fake chart clearance. A man with a syringe wearing hospital scrubs. That is not protection. Callahan's mouth opened. No words came. Alder's officer removed the phone from Callahan's hand. Callahan allowed it, but only because the hallway had too many witnesses and too many cameras still working beyond the dead one above Observation 2. Claire watched him. He looked at her once. In that look she saw the truth. Not all of it. Enough. Callahan had not built the machine, but he had opened doors for it. The man in scrubs was pulled upright by Marcus and Alder's officer. His surgical cap had fallen off. A bruise was already forming along his jaw where he had hit the wall. Mason's voice came from inside the room. "That is him." Claire turned. He was trying to lift his head. Emma held him down with one hand at his uninjured shoulder, gentle but firm. "Mason, do not move." "That is him," he said again, louder, shaking with fury. He checked Reeves. The man in scrubs looked toward the room. For the first time his expression changed. Not fear. Recognition. Keller stepped fully between Mason and the doorway. "You do not look at my patient." The words came out before he seemed to think about them. Claire looked at him. Keller did not look back. His eyes stayed on the intruder, and there was nothing polished or arrogant in him now. Only anger with a purpose. Alder nodded to his officer. "Remove him. Local police take custody after evidence collection. He does not leave this building with anyone wearing federal credentials until I approve it." The officer moved him down the hall. Callahan watched the man pass. The man did not look at Callahan. That told Claire more than a confession. Denny stepped out of the room and pointed at the shattered vial on the floor. "Housekeeping is not touching that." "No one touches it," Claire said. Denny looked at her cheek. "You are bleeding." Claire wiped the corner of her mouth with the back of her wrist. A thin smear of blood appeared there. Not enough to chart. Denny's eyes softened for half a second, then hardened again. "I am charting it anyway." Claire almost smiled. Then Mason groaned. The fight had cost him even from the bed. His heart rate climbed. His skin looked waxy under the light. The shoulder dressing had darkened again. Keller turned instantly. "He is destabilizing." They moved back inside. The hallway receded, but the danger did not leave. It pressed against the room from every side. Keller took the head of the bed. Emma checked oxygen and vitals. Denny opened the fresh blood set as soon as the unit arrived in Marcus's hands. Claire returned to Mason's right side and pressed 2 fingers to his wrist. "Stay with me." His eyes found hers. "You hit him." "He hit me first." Mason's mouth twitched, then twisted with pain. "Didn't say I disapproved. Save the praise." "You are expensive to keep alive." Keller checked the monitor and spoke without looking up. "Blood is going in." "Claire, tell him." Claire held the line where Mason could see it. "Blood transfusion, matched unit, left arm. You may feel cold." Mason looked at the bag, then at Keller, then back to Claire. "No sedation." "No sedation." Keller added, "No sedation." Mason nodded once. The blood began to run. For several minutes no one spoke except in the brief necessary language of emergency care. Pressure, pulse, respirations, dressing. Again, hold. The observation room stopped being a battlefield by inches and became a trauma room again. That was the victory Claire trusted most. Not the dramatic kind, not the kind that looked good in reports, the kind where the body got one more chance to keep its promise to stay alive. Mason's pressure began to climb, slowly. Ugly numbers became less ugly. Emma let out a breath she had been holding. Keller looked at the monitor, then at Claire. "He is stabilizing." Claire did not take her eyes off Mason. "Enough for imaging." "Not yet." He said it before she could. Denny looked between them. "Look at that, growth." Keller ignored her, which meant he had heard her. Alder entered again, stopping just inside the door. "Captain Callahan is under command restriction pending investigation. Master Sergeant Teague has provided a preliminary statement. Local police have custody of the intruder. The vial is secured." Mason's eyes moved to him. "Reeves." Alder's face softened barely. We recovered Warrant Officer Reeves's body near the second vehicle. Mason closed his eyes. His throat worked. Claire stayed silent. Alder continued. The packet he gave you was found inside your vest during field intake. It is secure. Mason opened his eyes. You have it. I do. Do not give it to Command Operations. I am not that tired sergeant. For the first time, Mason almost smiled. Then his eyes found Claire. Tide glass. Alder looked at her too. Claire knew what they were asking without anyone asking. The room had earned the truth, or at least the part that could be spoken without turning the walls into witnesses. She stepped back from the bed just far enough to breathe. Tide glass was supposed to be a rescue, she said. The words came out level. She had trained them that way in her own head for years, though she had never said them all in one place. A convoy went missing near the Gulf. Officially, the mission was support and recovery. Unofficially, we were sent to retrieve people who were never supposed to be there. Keller stood very still. Emma lowered her eyes, then raised them again, because looking away felt worse. Claire continued. We found more wounded than the report said existed. We were short on medical kits that had been marked delivered, short on batteries, short on blood warmers, short on radio parts. Every crate we needed was present in a document somewhere and absent in the dirt. Mason watched her with pain that was no longer only physical. Raven, 7 held position for extraction, Claire said. The extraction kept moving. 10 minutes, 20. Then Command changed the language. Active contact became contained. Casualties became unconfirmed. Unconfirmed became 0. Her voice tightened once. Only once. I sent the last call under Raven 7 actual. Tide glass 0. Hold the line. It was supposed to tell anyone listening that the report was false, that there were survivors, that we were still there. Alder closed his eyes. Claire looked at him. You heard it. He opened them. Too late. The words sat between them. Mason whispered. How did you get out? Claire looked at the floor for the first time. A wounded officer was evacuated before the final cutoff. I went with him because he would have died without a medic. And the others. The room held still. Claire's face became calm in the way ice is calm. The others held the line. No one tried to comfort her. That was mercy too. Mason's fingers twitched against the sheet. Claire moved closer and placed her hand near his, not touching until he shifted enough to allow it. He gripped her fingers weakly. You came back tonight? Claire looked at him. I came to work. No, he said. You came back. For once, Claire had no answer ready. Keller cleared his throat not to interrupt, but to keep himself from being swallowed by the silence. He needs surgery. Claire nodded. Mason's fingers tightened weakly. No transfer. Keller stepped closer. No transfer. Surgery here. Mason looked at him, searching for the lie. Keller held his gaze. You are my patient, he said. That was true before I deserved the sentence. Claire looked at him. Keller did not look away from Mason. I am going to repair what I can. I am going to call the surgical team. Claire stays until anesthesia, and no medication enters your line unless you hear it first. Mason swallowed. Anesthesia. Claire leaned in. When it is time, they tell you first. You choose it because your body needs repair. Not because someone took your voice. He breathed through the fear. You stay. I stay until you are under. And after. Keller answered. She will be here when you wake up if I have to assign half the hospital to make her sit down. Denny muttered I would pay to see that. The corner of Claire's mouth moved. Almost. Surgery prep began with no ceremony. The hospital remained under lockdown, but its purpose returned. Phones rang. Nurses moved. Blood reached the room. Imaging was cleared and guarded. The route was walked twice before Mason was moved. Claire named every person they passed. Keller walked at the head of the bed. Emma held the oxygen. Denny carried the chart like a weapon. In the imaging corridor, Mason stiffened at the narrow walls. Claire walked beside him. Hallway. Mercy Harbor. Lights overhead. Keller at your left. Emma behind the monitor. Denny with the chart. Marcus ahead. No Callahan. Mason's breathing shook, but he stayed on the bed. "Still here?" Claire asked. "Still here." The scans showed what Keller had feared and hoped in equal measure. No catastrophic abdominal injury, no collapsed lung. Shoulder damage ugly but repairable. Blood loss, severe contamination significant, but Mason had survived the part meant to silence him. In the surgical holding area, the lights were softer. Mason looked smaller there. Not weak, human. The anesthesiologist explained the medication slowly exactly as Claire instructed. Keller stood nearby in surgical cap and gown. Emma waited at the edge of the room. Denny had been ordered to rest and ignored it from the doorway. Mason turned his head toward Claire. Raven 7 actual. Claire's eyes narrowed. "Do not start." His lips curved faintly. "Tide glass 0. Claire leaned closer. "Hold the line," she said. His eyelids lowered. "Always," he whispered. The medication took him under with his hand still resting near hers. Claire stayed until his grip released. Only then did she step back. The surgery lasted hours. Rain stopped before dawn, leaving Savannah washed in gray under a thin morning sky. In the waiting area, outside the operating wing, Hank Bellamy sat in a chair with his bad leg propped on another, pretending he had not been told to return to his room. Denny sat beside him with 2 coffees and no patients left. Emma stood at the window watching the first weak light touch the wet parking lot. Claire stood alone near the wall. Her cheek had begun to bruise. There was dried blood beneath one fingernail she had missed. Keller came out just after sunrise, surgical cap in one hand, exhaustion across his face. Something else, too. Humility, maybe. Or just the look a man gets when the night has taken a tool to his certainty. "He made it," Keller said. Denny closed her eyes. Emma covered her mouth. Hank let out a breath that sounded like a prayer and a curse in the same language. Claire nodded once. Keller looked at her. Shoulder repair held. "We cleaned the wound. He needs more care, but he is stable." "Good." That was all she said. Keller stepped closer. For a moment, he seemed to be looking for the right words and hating everyone he found. "I owe you an apology." Claire's eyes moved to him. He did not dress it up. "I thought quiet meant uncertain. I thought restraint meant lack of command. I thought because you did not need the room to know you were right, maybe you were not built to lead it." Claire said nothing. Keller's throat moved. "I was wrong." The words were not loud. They did not need witnesses. But Emma heard them. Denny heard them. Hank heard them and pretended to study his coffee. Claire looked toward the operating doors. "You were right about one thing." Keller frowned. "What?" "I do not want command." She looked back at him. "I want the patient alive." Keller absorbed that, then nodded. "Then I want to build the room around that." It was not a speech. It was better than one. Claire accepted it with a tired nod. Alder found her later in the quiet corridor near the chapel. The hospital had begun to wake around them. Day shift voices filled the distance. Wheels rolled. Elevators opened. Somewhere a newborn cried, life continuing indifferent and miraculous. Alder stood beside her but did not crowd her. "Cole's statement is being protected through military judicial channels," he said. "The packet is secured outside command operations. Callahan is under review. Teague is cooperating." Claire looked at the chapel doors. "And Tide glass." Alder was quiet for a long time. "Reopened." The word did not heal anything. It did not bring back the men who had held the line until the line vanished beneath them. But it struck the sealed place inside her like the first tool against a buried door. Claire closed her eyes. "Alder said your name should never have disappeared." She opened them. "No name should have." He nodded. "No." For a while, neither spoke. Then Alder said, "There are people who would follow you again." Claire looked at him then. Her voice was calm. "I am not going back. I did not ask." "Yes," she said. "You did." Alder's mouth softened at one corner. "Fair." Claire looked down the hall toward the emergency department. "I have patients here." Alder followed her gaze. "So I noticed." 3 days later, Mason woke fully enough to remember. He woke in a guarded room with sunlight on the wall and machines speaking in soft tones around him. Emma was checking his chart. Denny was arguing with Dietary about broth. Keller stood near the door speaking quietly with a uniformed investigator. Claire sat in the chair where Mason could see her, not beside the window, not with her back to the door. Old habits did not vanish because the truth had been spoken. Mason turned his head. "You stayed?" Claire looked up from the chart in her lap. "You are very time-consuming." His voice was rough. "Did they get the packet?" "Alder has it." Callahan. Breathing, annoyed, restricted. "Good." His eyes moved over her bruised cheek. "He hit you. You were busy bleeding." "I handled it." Mason gave a weak laugh, then regretted it. Hurts to laugh, then stop being amused. He looked at her for a long moment. "Reeves." Claire's expression softened. "I am sorry." Mason closed his eyes. A tear slipped into his hairline. He did not wipe it away. He did not have the strength, and maybe no longer had the need to pretend. Claire sat quietly. After a while, he whispered, "He told me to find someone who would not move the body before hearing the truth." Claire's throat tightened. He chose well. Mason opened his eyes. "No," he said. "He died hoping well." Claire did not answer. Outside, the room life at Mercy Harbor rearranged itself around the scar the night had left. The official reports used careful language. Security incident, unauthorized access, protected witness, external review, temporary lockdown, staff response commendable. None of those words captured the truth. The truth lived in smaller changes. Security no longer stood inside a trauma bay without asking where the patient could see them. Nurses were invited into critical briefings before decisions were final. Emma began teaching residents that combative was a behavior, not a diagnosis. Keller stopped speaking over the quietest person in the room just because he could. Denny told anyone who tried to shortcut patient communication that she had survived one military conspiracy this month and did not have patience for lazy medicine. Hank told the story badly to anyone who came near his wound care room. Each version grew more dramatic. In one version, Claire threw a federal agent through a vending machine. In another, she disarmed 3 men with a roll of gauze and a tongue depressor. Claire told him to stop. Hank did not. 2 weeks after the attack, Mason was moved under legitimate protection. Not through a back corridor. Not under sedation. Not by men who refused to show names. He left through the ambulance bay just after sunset, when the sky over Savannah had turned copper and purple above the wet pavement. He was pale and stitched, and walking only because 2 people helped him pretend he did not need a wheelchair. Keller stood with his arms crossed near the doors. Emma held the discharge packet. Denny carried a bag of supplies and threatened to haunt him if he skipped antibiotics. Alder waited beside the transport vehicle. Teague stood near the rear door, no longer under Callahan's shadow. He nodded to Claire. "Ma'am." Claire gave him a look. He corrected himself. "Nurse Whitaker." "Better." Mason stopped in front of her. For a moment, neither spoke. The ambulance bay smelled of rain fuel and the river. Somewhere far off, a helicopter moved across the evening sky. The sound rolled faintly over the hospital roof. Claire heard it. So did Mason. This time, neither of them flinched first. Mason held out his hand. Claire took it carefully, mindful of the healing lines and the weakness still in his grip. "You gave me time," he said. "No," Claire said. "You used it. Alder says the testimony starts tomorrow. Then tell the truth slowly enough that they cannot misfile it." Mason smiled faintly. "You always give orders like medical advice. You always bleed during conversation." He looked at her with gratitude too heavy to say cleanly. "Raven 7 actual," he said. Claire sighed. "Mason." "Tide glass 0. She looked at him for a long second. The old code stood between them, no longer only a grave marker, no longer only a warning. It had become something else in the trauma bay under blood and fluorescent lights. A way for the living to find each other. Claire answered quietly. "Hold the line." Mason nodded. "Always." He climbed into the transport with help. The doors closed. The vehicle pulled away through the wet glow of the ambulance bay lights. Claire stood until it turned out of the lot. Keller came to stand beside her. "He is going to be difficult in testimony," he said. Claire watched the taillights fade. "He is alive. Difficult is allowed." Keller nodded. After a moment, he said, "The new trauma response protocol draft is on your desk." Claire looked at him. "My desk? The one I asked administration to stop using for broken monitors. That was not my desk. It is now." Claire turned back toward the hospital doors. "You are giving me paperwork as an apology, mostly as a survival strategy," Denny's voice called from inside. "Claire, room 5 is asking for the scary quiet nurse." Claire raised an eyebrow at Keller. He held up both hands. "Not my phrase." Emma appeared behind the glass, smiling despite herself. The automatic doors opened. Hospital air washed over Claire again. Antiseptic, coffee, warm plastic, old fear, new pain. The familiar machinery of people trying to live through the worst night of their lives. Claire stepped inside. A new nurse stood near the station, fresh-faced and nervous, watching, as Denny pointed her toward triage. The young nurse leaned toward Emma and whispered not quietly enough, "Why does everyone listen when she talks so softly?" Emma looked at Claire as she crossed the department. Claire picked up a chart, scanned it, and moved toward room 5 without slowing. Emma smiled. "Because some people do not need to raise their voice to command a battlefield."